Stop everything. Freeze the timeline. Cancel the plans. Because what Remy Ma just said on camera in 6 devastating words did not just end an argument. It detonated the entire narrative Papoose and Claressa Shields have been quietly building for the last 2 years, and now the whole culture is about to watch the fallout in real time. Papoose wants half of Remy Ma's empire. Remy just cracked open the vault on national record, and the woman standing behind the whole ambush is a world champion boxer who cannot keep her mouth shut for 48 hours straight. This is not a rumor. This is not a hint. This is Remy Ma, on camera, spelling it out in the shortest, sharpest sentence she has said in 3 years of silence. And the second that clip hit the timeline, every seasoned observer of this saga realized the same thing at the same moment. The divorce is not stalled because of paperwork. The divorce is not stalled because of scheduling. The divorce is stalled because somebody is trying to walk out of a marriage with a suitcase that never belonged to him. And the only reason he has the nerve to try it is because a champion in a different weight class has been whispering in his ear like a coach in a corner between rounds. Real talk. If you have been following this story since the first crack showed up in that marriage 2 summers ago, you already felt the tremor coming. You felt it in the silences. You felt it in the strategic photo dumps. You felt it in the way Claressa kept surfacing in interviews she had no business being asked about. You felt it every time Papoose did a podcast and said just enough to sound reasonable and just little enough to leave the truth on the cutting room floor. And now the tremor has a name, a number, and a target. So sit down, lock in, pour whatever you drink when the culture gets loud, and let me walk you through the whole board. The pieces, the moves, the motive, the money, the child, the courtroom, and the person nobody in the mainstream press wants to admit is running the entire play from a corner nobody is looking at. Because by the time I finish breaking this down, you are going to see this whole saga the way it was meant to be seen. Not as gossip, not as celebrity noise, not as another tabloid divorce, but as a full-scale strategic operation with a champion boxer as the coach, an estranged husband as the fighter, and a queen of hip-hop as the target. Because here is where this thing starts, and I want you to hear this correctly. Remy Ma has been quiet, deliberately quiet, professionally quiet. The kind of quiet that costs a woman a lot of energy to hold when the entire internet is trying to bait her into swinging. The kind of quiet that only a professional lyricist, somebody whose entire craft is the art of the verbal counterpunch, could actually hold for as long as she has. Because make no mistake, Remy Ma has forgotten more punchlines than most of her critics will ever write. And the fact that she has kept those punchlines off Claressa for this long is discipline, not weakness. For months, the loudest voice in this triangle has not been the wife, and it has not been the husband. It has been the third party, the boxer, the champion, the loud, brash, endlessly online Claressa Shields, who has treated Remy's name like a punching bag she gets paid to hit. Every couple of weeks, another quote. Every couple of weeks, another laugh into a camera. Every couple of weeks, another jab dressed up as a joke. And Remy, to her credit, kept her mouth shut. Kept her name off Claressa's tongue, kept the drama out of the child's line of sight, kept walking, until she didn't. Because the second Claressa mentioned Remy by name in that last clip, the one every single blog reposted within the hour, Remy came out and delivered one line. One line. 6 words. And every single person who has ever watched a divorce turn into a war zone recognized the temperature of that line immediately. He's not getting half a shake. That was it. That was the entire statement. And in that one sentence, Remy Ma told the entire world what has actually been happening behind the courtroom door. A courtroom door, by the way, that these two have not even walked through yet. Because when a woman says her estranged husband is not getting half of anything, that means he asked. That means his team asked. That means somewhere in the paperwork or the pre-negotiation, a number was floated, and that number had the word half attached to it. And Remy Ma decided the entire planet needed to hear that number get incinerated on camera. 6 words. Not a track. Not a diss. Not a 9-minute interview. 6 words. And in those 6 words, she said more than 100 podcast episodes have managed to say in 2 years of speculation. Now the internet is on fire. And you know what makes this different from every other celebrity divorce in the last 5 years? The women are not the only ones in Remy's corner. The men are in her corner too. Straight up. Because the moment fans did the math on Remy's income versus Papoos's income during this marriage, the The balance sheet spoke for itself. Remy has been the breadwinner. Remy has been the engine. Remy has been the person carrying the household financially for the last several years while her husband built a much quieter career on the side. And now, allegedly, that same husband wants to walk away with a slice that reflects none of that reality. That is the accusation. That is the temperature. That is what Remy just confirmed in 6 words. And whether you love her or you have your reservations about her, that particular flavor of ambush hits a nerve for every working woman and every working man who has watched somebody they love try to be robbed on the way out the door. But this is not just about Papoose. This is bigger than Papoose. Because if it were just Papoose asking for a number, that would be a normal ugly divorce, and the internet would move on within a week. What has kept this story alive? What has kept this story trending, dissected, debated, and relitigated on every podcast on the network is the third figure standing at the edge of the frame with her gloves already on. Claressa Shields. The champ, the champ, the champ. And I say her name 3 times because I want you to sit with it, because the pattern this woman has established is not accidental, and it is not innocent, and it is definitely not, in my opinion, uninvolved. Look at the timeline. Look at the receipts. Every time this divorce moved an inch closer to resolution, Claressa Shields somehow appeared with a new comment, a new laugh, a new soundbite, a new photo, a new interview clip in which Remy Ma's name conveniently rolled off her tongue. And here's the part that broke me, because I have watched this movie before and I know how it ends. That is not a coincidence. That is choreography. That is somebody who understands that if you can bait the other woman into losing her composure on tape, you hand a lawyer a gift-wrapped exhibit for the courtroom. That is what this is. That is what has been happening in front of us this whole time, dressed up as a champion having fun on social media. In reality, in my opinion, what we have been watching is a 2-person tag team trying to walk a professional artist and mother into a temper trap, so that when the custody conversation and the settlement conversation finally arrive, they can play the tape and say, "Look how unstable she is. Look how emotional she is. Look at what she said. Look at what she posted." And Remy, please hear this, because I know somebody in your circle is going to send this clip your way. You cannot bite. You cannot swing. You cannot get pulled into the alley. The moment you match her energy, the moment you post the response, the moment you say the sentence you actually want to say, that becomes their next exhibit. That is the play. That has been the play since the first Claressa quote hit the blogs. So stay quiet. Stay grounded. Stay in your corner. Because the champ is not really trying to fight you. The champ is trying to record you. Now I want to get into the money for a minute, because this is the part everybody is arguing about in the comment sections and nobody is actually breaking down correctly. Divorce law is not TikTok. Divorce law does not care who has more followers. Divorce law does not care what the streets think is fair. Divorce law cares about jurisdiction, and it cares about how assets were acquired, and it cares about whether property was separate or marital, and it cares about the paper trail. That is the entire game. So when a man tells his estranged wife he wants half, what he is actually saying is, my legal team believes we can argue that a large chunk of what you built during our marriage is community property. And in some states, they would be right. In other states, they would be laughed out of the room. Depends on the state. Depends on the paperwork. Depends on whether there was ever a premarital agreement, a postmarital agreement, or a documented separation of finances. Nobody outside that courtroom knows the answer for sure. But here is what we do know, based on nothing more than common sense and the public record. Remy Ma has been the visible earner. Remy Ma is the tour, the show, the album, the appearance fee, the brand deal, the reality television check. That is the empire. And when a man watches an empire from the passenger seat for a decade, and then, at the moment the marriage collapses, decides he is owed half of the empire he did not build, the entire working world flinches, because everybody in the workforce has thought about that exact scenario at least once. That is why this story detonated. Not because it is Remy, not because it is Papoose, because the situation itself hits an emotional bruise that millions of people have privately touched. Somebody built something. Somebody else wants a slice they did not earn. And now a courtroom is going to referee. And every single person who has ever been in a long-term partnership where one person carried the financial weight while the other one enjoyed the ride is watching this saga with a knot in their stomach, because deep down they know that if the marriage they are in right now collapsed tomorrow, they might be Remy Ma, or they might be Papoose. And nobody wants to admit which one they are until a moment like this one forces the mirror in front of their face. Let me pull up an example the streets already know, because a caller on a recent broadcast brought this up, and it is worth revisiting. Gilbert Arenas, former NBA All-Star, made a fortune in the league, ended up in a divorce that walked out of his life with the house, an 8-figure payout, the businesses, cash on the way out, and a permanent monthly line item for child support. Gilbert has been on podcasts for years now talking about that number, and he has become the cautionary tale that certain men bring up every time a public divorce breaks. The women always get half, they say. The women always take it all. Except, and this is the part they leave out, Gilbert's situation was not identical to what is happening here, because Gilbert was the earner. Gilbert was the empire. Gilbert was the one being carved up. In this current situation, the earner is Remy, and the person allegedly reaching for the slice is Papoose. So the analogy some fans are drawing does not fit clean. And when the men in Remy's comment section are backing her up, not the women, the men, that is because those same men understand the reversal, and they understand what it feels like to watch somebody try to walk out with something they did not lift. Now, do I know the exact numbers? I do not. Do I have the court filings? I do not. Somebody in my circle went to a courthouse and pulled what could be pulled. And let me just say the picture that came back was consistent with the direction Remy is describing on camera. But I am not going to sit here and play detective. I am not going to sit here and play attorney. I am not Matlock. What I am doing is what every honest observer in this space should be doing. Reading the signals, listening to the voices, and telling you what the pattern looks like from the outside. And the pattern looks like a man who feels entitled to the outcome of a fight he did not train for. That is the pattern. Fight me in the comments if you disagree, but that is what it looks like from where I am standing. And I have been standing here watching celebrity marriages implode for a very long time. I have seen the playbook. I have seen the drag-it-out strategy. I have seen the third-party antagonist. I have seen the calculated public appearances. This one has all the fingerprints. All of them. But here is where it gets ugly, because a divorce is one thing, and a child is another thing entirely. And this is the part of the story where I have to slow all the way down. Because there is a small human being at the center of this saga who did not sign up for any of it, did not ask for the mother, did not ask for the father, did not ask for the champion, did not ask for the tabloids, did not ask for the podcast circuit. And every adult standing in that triangle has an obligation, a legal one, a moral one, a spiritual one, to make sure that child is shielded from the drama the adults are creating. That is the floor. That is the minimum. And when I watch Claressa Shields keep dropping Remy's name into open microphones, I have to ask, sincerely, does anybody in that camp understand that every quote lands eventually on a family court judge's desk? Every post? Every clip? Every laugh into a camera? Because the courts do not think that stuff is funny. The courts read that stuff carefully, and the courts remember. So the reason I keep coming back to Claressa in this breakdown is not because I have a personal issue with her as an athlete. She is a champion. She is one of the greatest boxers of her generation. Let the record show that. The issue is not the resume. The issue is the behavior. Because the behavior is aggressive, it is persistent, it is targeted, and it is being directed at a woman who is trying to co-parent through a very public collapse. And every time I watch Claressa smirk into a camera about Remy, I see the same choreography. Get her to react. Get her to swing. Get her to post. Get her to say something regrettable on somebody's show. Get the tape. Deliver the tape. Move the chessboard. And speaking of chessboards, this is the framework I want you to carry out of this video, because I think it is the cleanest way to explain what is really happening emotionally to Remy right now. Imagine every person in your life is a piece on a board. Some of those pieces move slowly. Some of them move fast. Some of them protect you. Some of them threaten you. And every day, every interaction, every post, every rumor, every comment moves one of those pieces one square closer to your king. Your king, in this case, is your peace. Your king is your ability to co-parent, to work, to sleep, to record, to walk into a room without your shoulders up around your ears. Now imagine that for months on end, one particular piece across the board has been sliding closer and closer to that king. And every time you try to focus on the game, on the child, on the career, on the family, on your health, that piece slides another square. And then another. And then another. And you look up, and the piece is not just one square away. The piece is in your face. That is where Remy is. Exactly where Remy is. That is why the half a shake line came out the way it did. Because when a queen has been trapped in the corner for too long, she does not whisper her exit. She announces it. That single sentence was Remy Ma moving her queen back to the center of the board and telling every piece on that grid, I see you. All of you. And I am not going out like this. Not on your terms. Not on your timeline. Not for a number your team pulled out of thin air. 6 words. Chessboard reset. Everybody scrambling. That is what a real move looks like. Now let me address something the internet is going to bring up in the comment section under this video, because it has already been circulating in the discourse. There is a very specific claim floating around that during a recent interview on the Angie Martinez show, Remy said something in a joking tone about knowing people and being comfortable around firearms. And immediately certain corners of the internet decided to snip that clip and hold on to it. And here is what I want to say about that, plainly. It was a joke. It was said in a room full of adults having a professional conversation. And under normal circumstances, no reasonable person would have paused on it for a second. But we are not in normal circumstances. We are in a public collapse of a marriage, and there is an opposing side that has demonstrated, in my opinion, a willingness to collect anything that can be spun. So even the jokes are ammunition now. Even the offhand comments are ammunition. Even the ad-libs are ammunition. And Remy has to know this. Her team has to know this. Every friend she has left inside her circle has to sit her down and say, from this moment forward, every microphone is a courtroom exhibit. Every camera is a deposition. Every laugh into a room is a piece of evidence somebody on the other side is trying to save for later. That is the environment now. That is the war. And in a war, every silence is a weapon and every soundbite is a surrender. Remy has been holding her weapon the entire time. The other side has been surrendering microphones by the pound. And you know what makes this heavier? The public commentary on both sides is loud, and it is confident, and most of it is completely wrong. Because a public opinion is not a legal ruling. A viral tweet is not a court order. A podcast take is not a settlement agreement. And I want everybody who is going to comment under this video to hear me on this. You can absolutely have an opinion on this saga. That is your right. That is your First Amendment. That is what the algorithm is designed for. But your opinion does not decide the outcome. A judge decides the outcome. A judge who does not read your comments. A judge who does not watch your TikToks. A judge who looks at filings, evidence, testimony, and law. And that judge is going to reach a conclusion that is going to feel unfair to somebody, no matter which way it goes. That is how these things end. Somebody is going to be upset. That is guaranteed. What is not guaranteed is what the judgment is going to be, because we do not have the paperwork. We do not have the timeline. We do not have the receipts. And honestly, we do not need them to see the shape of what is happening. Because when you strip away the noise and look at the geometry of this thing, the shape is this. A man is trying to leave a marriage with a number in his hand. A woman is trying to leave a marriage with her peace intact. A third party is trying to influence the outcome by chipping away at the woman's composure. And a child is trying to grow up in the middle of it all, uninterested in the noise, unaware of the strategy, and completely deserving of a quieter world than the adults are giving them. That is the situation in one paragraph. Everything else is decoration. Everything else is clickbait. Everything else is people trying to sell you their version of a story that already told itself the moment Remy stopped speaking in metaphors and started speaking in dollar amounts. Now, if I could get every party in a room for 5 minutes and speak to them with no cameras, no lawyers, no fans, no comment sections, this is what I would say. To Papoose. Brother, if you are the man the streets thought you were for the last decade, then you understand that a woman who built her own empire does not owe you a percentage of the bricks she laid before you got to the job site. Take what you brought in. Take what the two of you built together. And walk away with your name intact. The moment you reach for a number that everybody around you knows you did not earn, you become a punchline that lasts a lifetime. Ask any man who has ever tried to collect on somebody else's grind. That reputation follows you into every green room, every studio, every venue, every meeting, every relationship you try to build afterward. It becomes the first sentence in every introduction. Do not let that be your first sentence. To Claressa, champion, nobody is denying your resume. Nobody is denying your medals. Nobody is denying your place in boxing history. And nobody with any sense wants to see that legacy dented by a public feud you did not need to enter. This is not your fight. This is not your family. This is not your paycheck. Every time you say her name, you attach your career to a courtroom you have no business being inside. And if the goal was to make Papoose feel supported, mission accomplished, but the damage to your own brand is compounding faster than the loyalty is paying off. Athletes have lost sponsorship over less. Athletes have lost belts over less. Athletes have lost their opportunities to defend their titles because the executives in the offices decided the athlete had become a distraction. Do not become that headline. Get back in the gym. Get back to the belts. Let the household handle the household. And to Remy, Empress, Reina, whatever title you answer to on the days the world does not deserve you, do not move. Do not swing. Do not post. Do not respond. Do not even glance at that side of the internet. Because the trap is set. The trap is baited. And the only way to escape the trap is to keep walking past it as if it does not exist. Every silent day is a day their strategy is failing. Every unrecorded moment is a moment your composure is winning. The world already sees what is happening. The world has already picked a side. The comment sections are running your victory lap for you. All you have to do is show up for your child, show up for your work, show up for your health, and let the courtroom do the boring, procedural, slow, and ultimately correct work of ending this the right way. Now let me address one more thing before we get to the closing, because I have been thinking about this all week, and I have not seen anybody in the commentary space actually say it out loud. There is a specific reason Papoose's alleged legal strategy of chasing a percentage he did not build is going to backfire on him in ways his current advisors are not preparing him for. It is not just about the settlement. It is about the culture of the industry he is trying to keep working in after this divorce closes. Hip-hop is a small world. Hip-hop is a memory sport. Hip-hop remembers who did what to whom, and hip-hop punishes men who become known for taking rather than building. Ask around. Every man in the culture who has ever tried to walk out of a marriage with a bag that did not belong to him has spent the rest of his career carrying that bag as a scarlet letter. You cannot outrun that story. You cannot rebrand around that story. You cannot podcast your way past that story. That story becomes the first paragraph of every future interview, every future feature, every future collaboration meeting. And I do not think Papoose is currently accounting for that cost when he lets his team float that word, half, into a negotiation. And Claressa, I know somebody is going to send you this too, so I want to say this one directly. The women in your sport are watching. The federations you fight under are watching. The sponsors who write your checks are watching. And the executives who decide which fight cards you headline are watching. And what they see right now is not a champion focused on her craft. What they see right now is a champion inserting herself, week after week, into a family conflict she has no legal, financial, or professional reason to be inside of. Every single one of those decision makers is quietly asking the same question. How long before this becomes a liability? How long before the endorsement partners get uncomfortable? How long before the network executives start scheduling around her instead of scheduling with her? Because sports business is a game of reputation management, and every soundbite you drop about Remy Ma is a chip out of the reputation you spent your entire career building. Now here is the deeper cultural piece I want to plant, and this is where I want the audience to really sit with me for a second. When we talk about celebrity divorces in Black entertainment, there is a particular pattern that keeps repeating and nobody wants to name it. The pattern is that the woman is almost always asked to do more emotional labor, more image labor, more silence labor than the man is. The man gets to do interviews. The man gets to release songs. The man gets to have his side of the story amplified by co-signers, podcasters, and comedy-adjacent commentators who all owe him a favor. The woman gets to be dissected. The woman gets to be reduced. The woman gets to be turned into a meme, a caption, a punchline for the next 12-month cycle. And every single time, when the dust finally settles, the culture looks back and realizes the woman was telling the truth the whole time. Every single time. From the earliest scandals of the 90s to the reality television collapses of the 2010s to the divorce filings sitting in courthouses right now, the pattern holds. The woman is telling the truth. The man is running a public relations campaign. And it takes an average of 18 months for the public to catch up. Remy Ma is not going to wait 18 months. Remy Ma is not going to wait 18 days. Remy Ma dropped 6 words and collapsed the timeline. That is what makes this saga historic. And here is the part one want the audience to sit with, because this is what elevates this whole situation from celebrity gossip into a real cultural lesson. Every household in this country that is watching this saga is quietly comparing it to their own life. There is a mother watching this from her couch tonight who is exactly one bad conversation away from her own version of this fight. There is a father watching this who is fighting to see his child and does not know where to turn. There is a young woman watching this who is dating a man who might, one day, try to walk out of her life with more than he ever put in. And there is a young man watching this who is being taught, in real time, what not to do when a relationship collapses. That is the value of these public stories. Not the gossip, not the who said what. The lesson, the blueprint, the warning. And the warning here, delivered by Remy Ma in 6 devastating words, is this: do not marry a person and then try to leave with a slice of them that you did not earn. Because the world is watching now, and the world remembers, and the world is teaching itself, in real time, how to spot the game the next time it comes for somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's mother, somebody's queen. Let me pivot one more time before we wrap this, because there is one more angle nobody has explored properly, and I have been sitting on this since the half a shake clip dropped. The reason Claressa's involvement is so strategically damaging to Papoose's actual legal position is that a family court judge does not want to see a co-parenting environment that includes a public antagonist. A judge wants stability. A judge wants distance from drama. A judge wants a household where the child can grow up without the entire internet on their doorstep every morning. And every time Claressa opens a live stream and mentions Remy's name, she is, in effect, making Papoose's custody argument worse, not better. She thinks she is stirring the pot to weaken Remy. In reality, she is contaminating the environment Papoose is trying to prove he can offer. It is the strategic own goal of the century, and neither one of them, in my opinion, has clocked it yet. Because when your third-party ally is publicly volatile, publicly obsessed, and publicly incapable of restraint, you are not gaining an asset. You are inheriting a liability that walks into court on your ledger. Papoose's own case is being weakened, one Claressa livestream at a time, and his team is either too polite to tell him or too invested in the fight to admit it. That is why silence would serve both of them. That is why silence would serve everybody, actually. Silence protects the child. Silence protects the settlement. Silence protects the reputations of every adult involved. Silence is the currency nobody in this triangle has decided to spend yet, and it is the only currency that would actually get any of them out of this fight in one piece. But silence does not sell podcast ads. Silence does not book interview segments. Silence does not trend on the timelines. So the machine keeps eating the story alive, and every party in the triangle keeps feeding the machine because they think the machine is on their side. The machine is on nobody's side. The machine only feeds itself. So where does the story go from here? Honestly, I do not know. Nobody knows. What we know is this: Remy has spoken. The number has been named. The other woman is not going to stop talking. The man in the middle is not going to drop his ask. And the courtroom, when it finally opens its doors, is going to become the loudest room in celebrity news for as long as the proceedings drag on. Buckle up, because the half a shake clip was the appetizer. What is coming next? The filings, the disclosures, the testimony, the exhibits, the leaks, the retractions, the deposition dropouts, the sudden new witnesses. That is the main course. And the network, the blogs, the podcast circuit, the group chats, the culture at large, they are all going to eat every course of it, whether they should or not. I will tell you what I am going to do, though. I am going to keep my eyes on the child. That is where my attention stays. That is where every adult's attention should stay. Because at the end of every one of these public collapses, when the checks clear and the lawyers get paid and the podcast episodes get archived, there is one small person who has to walk into a classroom on Monday morning and pretend they did not just watch their entire family get processed by the internet. That kid deserves a chapter of quiet. And every adult in this triangle owes them that chapter, whether the courts award it or not. Because at the end of the day, the courts can partition the money, the courts can partition the property, the courts can partition the calendar, but no court on earth can partition the memory of a childhood spent inside a spectacle. Once that childhood is loud, it is loud forever. And no settlement, no matter how favorable, ever refunds the noise. All right, that is the picture as I see it. Remy Ma has drawn her line. Papoose has revealed his hand. Claressa Shields has confirmed her role in the choreography, whether she meant to or not. And the entire culture is watching to see whether the courtroom delivers what the internet is demanding. It probably will not. It probably cannot. Courts do not deliver what the internet demands. Courts deliver what the paperwork proves. But even if the courtroom lands somewhere the fans do not love, the court of culture has already returned its verdict, and its verdict is loud, unified, and unmistakable. Remy is in the right corner. Papoose is in the wrong corner. Claressa is in the wrong corner. And the child, wherever they are tonight, deserves a quieter tomorrow than any of the adults in this story have earned. Let me leave you with one more thought before I open the comment section for the real conversation. There is a specific moment in every high-stakes conflict where the party with the moral high ground stops caring about being understood and starts caring about being clear. Remy Ma just crossed that moment. She stopped negotiating. She stopped explaining. She stopped hoping the culture would eventually clock the pattern on its own. She dropped 6 words and drew the line. And every woman watching this, every woman who has ever been asked to explain herself into a shape her partner would tolerate, recognized that transition the second it happened. That is why the reaction was not shock. That is why the reaction was recognition. Because that moment does not belong to Remy alone. That moment belongs to every woman who has ever finally said the thing out loud that she had been drafting inside her head for years. Remy Ma just spoke for a lot of people this week, whether she meant to or not. And that is why this story is going to keep growing until the courtroom finally opens its doors. This is bigger than her. This is bigger than him. This is bigger than the third party in the ring. This is a cultural moment about who gets to keep what they built and who has to answer for what they took. And every single person watching this video already knows which side of that question they are on. And Remy, on the flip side, is doing the exact opposite. Remy is compressing her narrative into 6 words at a time and letting the culture do the amplification work for her. That is not amateur. That is masterclass. That is what an artist with 2 decades of pen game does when the moment finally calls for the pen. She wrote a 6-word line. She let it detonate. She stepped back. She let the crowd count the bodies. That is not a woman losing her cool. That is a woman finally deploying her cool exactly the way it was meant to be deployed. And that is why, when the dust settles on this saga, the version of this story that gets carried into the next decade is not going to be Papoose's version. It is not going to be Claressa's version. It is going to be the version Remy compressed into 6 words on a random afternoon while the internet was watching. Now I want to hear from you, because this is the part of the video where the comment section becomes the loudest room in the building. Do you think Papoose actually has a legal case for the number he is chasing? Or do you think his team is bluffing to slow the process down? Do you think Claressa is genuinely a third-party friend of the household? Or do you think she is running a strategy on Papoose's behalf, whether she admits it or not?